Welcome back, everyone, to part two, Cyber Talk with Nikolay, Trust or Not to Trust, with Krishna and Narayanaswamy. And we're going to continue our exciting conversation and practical implementation of Zero Trust. Seems like we're getting a few steps closer to the idea that data can protect itself. And if you find a piece of information laying somewhere in the open, you still won't be able to read it because you don't have any right to open this envelope. Sort of like it's not exactly old days when you can unseal it and seal it back, but in a way, it's like you don't have to have this technological fortress in front of the data in order to protect it. So at some point, we'll get closer to say, yes, okay, here's information, but you have zero rights to open this file. So even the file is in the open, you still cannot see what's inside of it and whether it's sensitive or not.
Right.
Now,
Yeah. Encrypted data becomes like public data because it is protected, right? But I think one other point I want to also make is you can have all these techniques, right? As we pointed out earlier, if the attacker, they all they need to find is one hole, right? And they can get to the data. So always augmenting these data protection, zero trust, and all that is a way in which you are observing behavior of users. We talk about UEBA, the user entity behavioral anomaly detection systems. That becomes an integral part of the zero trust framework, where you're observing the activities of users and then you're correlating it again using modern day techniques, using AI and ML. You can kind of profile users and look for anomalous activities, and you can use that as an extra signal to detect unusual access to data or a breach of data and so on. So I always see like some form of anomaly detection, behavioral anomaly detection, go hand in hand with like a zero trust framework.
yeah, definitely, and I'm with you there because we can't really solve this problem even through incidents and everything else that when exfiltration happen. Things don't happen out of the blue.
Correct.
Somebody's behavior has changed, and somebody's trying to do like if my credential is gonna get stolen by somebody,
Yeah,
they're not gonna be behaving just like I do.
exactly.
So there will be indicators that my credentials were used to download information or do certain things that I typically don't do. And if somebody steals my credentials and they do exactly the same things, they're not going to achieve any goals at all because I don't have access to anything
And
else other than fancy presentation. That's about it. So,
right. And what is also scary is not just credentials, right? Modern day applications are all working on APIs, and so it's a token, an API token. You get an API token based on
right.
authentication. So you can have multi-factor authentication, but once you get a token, if the token is stolen, then you have bypassed all the multi-factor authentication because you now have the keys to go and access the data. So I mean, while APIs make things like more automatable and more thing, at the same time it brings with it some cautions, because now that becomes a vector or surface that hackers are going after, right? How do I
Right.
steal like AWS tokens, or how do I steal like SaaS application tokens and so on? Excuse me.
No, that sounds good. So one question I have on right now, a lot of people, well, a lot of companies and enterprises moving into the cloud. So like it, don't like it, that's where the world is going. So everyone is going there, and maybe at some point the world is going to be coming back into data centers. But the reality is, people are moving. How would you say if somebody is in the process of getting into the cloud and they consider zero trust, would it be the right approach for them to take to say, yes, we don't want to just lift and shift and end up in the cloud the same way that we've been in on-prem, but we can implement additional technologies and build it right. So once we get in the cloud, we'll be zero trust. And how would they go about doing it?
Yeah, that's a very timely question, because we are finding more and more organizations adopt going to the cloud. In fact, when I talk to CISOs and CIOs and others, they have a very clear strategy of next maybe 3 years, 5 years, put N years, right? I want to go to a zero data center footprint. So, which becomes very important as they move that data from what used to be an on-prem resources into the cloud, to start and look at putting zero trust solutions, right? So if you're following the Gartner analysts, right, they've come up with this new architecture framework called SASE, which stands for Secure Access Service Edge. which
Mhm.
consists of two components, right? There is a SSE, the security service edge component, right, which sits in the cloud and which is governing user traffic going to web, going to like cloud could be SaaS as well as public cloud like IaaS, as well as to your private data centers. So and and then the ability to put zero trust policies in that SASE framework, right, is the right approach. I'll tell you a few things, right, that becomes even more important when you start looking at the migration to cloud. When you look at the tier one cloud applications, so let me take some examples, right? Like take it Office 365, Google, Box, Dropbox, and so on. All of these are these are SaaS applications that follow a freemium model, meaning that consumers like you and I can have our own version of these cloud services, right? Like I have my Gmail account, so I have my Gmail, I have my G Drive, and so on. But my company also uses Google, right? And so when you start looking at SaaS, it becomes even more nuanced as to do I allow G Drive and Gmail, or do I block it, right? If I'm my company is using it, I have to allow it. But as most of you know, when you go to Gmail, it's mail.google.com. How do I know? Am I attaching this file to my company Gmail address, or am I attaching it to my personal Gmail address? So these are the more finer points of zero trust that we are seeing as organizations move to the cloud. You not only have to be worried about putting policies to allow or not allow access to certain applications, but even when you allow certain applications, is it my instance, my company instance, or my partner instance of the cloud app, or is it a rogue instance? Because as you can imagine, most of the threat actors, malware, ransomware actors, are using the cloud applications, right? We put out a threat report every quarter, right? And what we are finding is the typical, I'm not naming companies, but typically, the most popular ones like your OneDrive and G Drive and so on are the ones where the attackers are also using to host their malware, right? So it's very important as you move to the cloud to not blindly allow or not allow certain cloud applications, but also when you decide to allow certain cloud applications, to be more careful as to, is this what instance of the cloud applications is my users going to? Are they going to my company's instance or not, right? So yeah, so to answer your question in short, is absolutely very important. I think tools are available to control where your data is moving when it goes to off-prem to cloud, whether it's public cloud or SaaS.
Got it. So it's very prudent for somebody who is considering any kind of migration, consider zero trust and build it as they go, not to do one step at a time and then go and redo the whole thing. So definitely, thanks for that. So from perspectives of, I know you've been around for quite some time. Like, do you have any cool war stories with zero trust that you would like to share with the audience that you came across and was interesting case for anyone to learn from and hear what was happening and how it was done?
I'll tell you the good and bad, right? So the bad one is obviously
That
the
works.
yeah, let's do the bad first and come to the good later. The bad was obviously when COVID hit, right? And all of a sudden, between a Friday and Monday, people are asked to work from home, and we found that many customers who did not anticipate that solution, that situation, came up with a circumstance where their existing gear was not able to scale, and so people had to scramble. In fact, the first few weeks of the shutdown was like horror stories for many organizations, right? So we had a lot of from our customers, we had a lot of inbound calls trying to see how we could help. The good part was, we had built out an infrastructure in the cloud, so we could quickly move some of these organizations to use the cloud version. At least they could slowly ease the burden on their on-prem. So that's kind of that's the nearest one that I can hear, that I can remember, where it was kind of a bad situation that no one predicted would happen, right? Now let's come to the good part, right? The good part is kind of what I explained before, right? Like as organizations start moving to the cloud, they are also becoming very aware that while cloud is good, it's going to make my users more productive, right? It's a shared responsibility. Just because I chose Microsoft or Google, pick your vendor, right, of choice, does not mean that I'm automatically protected, right? Obviously, they do their very best in protecting their infrastructure from getting abused, from getting attacked, and so on. But your data is your responsibility, right? These cloud applications
Yeah.
also make collaboration very easy, and so on. So some of the good stories that we have heard, Nikolay, is when when organizations adopted like an SSE solution, a security service edge solution, one of the things that they could do, like I'll give you an example of a bank that deployed the solution. Obviously, they didn't want to go draconian and say I'm going to block these applications and not, and so on, right? So if you look at the most egregious cloud applications, they fall under like three categories. One is cloud storage, right, where people can go do whatever they want. They can upload data and store it there, download it at any time they want. The other one is collaboration. So let's face it, right, email is becoming less and less of a base of collaboration. It's more Slack, or it is like Teams, or Google Meet, and so on, right? So collaboration is another way in which like data can be sent out from organizations, right? And of course, the last one is webmail. So cloud storage, collaboration, webmail. Webmail, because most organizations allow their users to go access their webmail, whether it's Gmail or whatever, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, whatever it is, right? So most organizations see that as the first set of SaaS applications where data can leak out without their knowledge. So this organization, that where we had a good story of zero trust, where they did it in a very methodical fashion, was deploy an SSE solution, a security service edge solution, whereby whenever the users accessed the web as well as SaaS, right, it was going through this cloud security solution. And in the first month, what they did was purely put it in observing mode, right? They just observed what kind of activities users are performing, right? How many uploads are going to cloud storage, how many uploads to webmail, attachments to webmail, and so on, right? And calibrated that, right? So they knew definitely their users were sending data to these SaaS applications. In the second month, what they did was they just, so the policy that they created was look for uploads to risky cloud applications. So risky meaning the Cloud Security Alliance has this thing called CCM, the Cloud Controls Matrix, which is a good way of identifying cloud services that are enterprise ready or not. And so, like in the example of Netskope platform, we kind of quantified it in a score from 0 to 100. So in that case, what they said was 100 being a very good cloud application, where 0 being very bad, right? So pick a threshold and say any SaaS application that is below a threshold of, like, let's say 60, right? I want to alert. That's a policy, right? And they did put that for a month and observe the behavior. And they did see a lot of people uploading data to these risky cloud applications, right? The second month, what they did was just change that policy action from an alert to a user alert, whereby the user sees a pop-up which says, hey, you're about to upload this file to this cloud application. Do you know that you should be using OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, Box, whatever it is, right? And what the story we heard was 98% of the time the user backed off and said, yes, I should not be uploading it, right?
Oh,
So that's a good story of zero trust, where just putting a speed bump, people are going fast, they want to get their job done. You put a speed bump that makes them slam the brake to think, okay, what should I do? Should I continue with this or not continue with this, right? And that, I thought, was a great story, that of zero trust in action, where the risk was dramatically reduced by just using these solutions, modern solutions.
yeah, that's great. And Krishna, thank you for that. So it's definitely putting those little hooks and speed bumps, as you call them. People just become aware of the situation, and in many cases, they make right decision. It's not, well, I probably shouldn't be doing this. Versus most cases, people not aware what they do, and then they just simply disseminate information. So looks like we're coming close to an end. So one last parent thought on lessons learned. So from wherever you implemented zero trust, anything that you can share, and what users need to be mindful going into zero trust.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, always start with identifying the protect surface. I think sometimes people start off with what policy I should be putting and so on. So I think the first thing is, if you want to put the horse before the cart, like the way it should be, is to identify the protect surface that you want to protect, and then start formulating an arc. And then the next thing is identifying the traffic flows, right? Where, how are traffic flowing to access those assets? Now that you've identified your assets, what are the various traffic flows? And then how do you then put some controls? First of all, put some solutions to get visibility, and the second thing is to put some controls, right? And be aware that many of the modern day applications and destinations where people go to could be shared multi-tenant services. So you want to be very mindful of that, so that your policies, zero trust policies, only cover the slice of the service that pertains to your organization, and not a broad one, right? So overall, uh, coming up with a methodical process of implementing zero trust will make you successful, and at the same time give you a good reduction in risk, as opposed to just thinking of it as a checkbox and trying to say, okay, I need this solution, let me just use it, right? I think being methodical and following the steps, and there is some very good literature out there. If you look for steps towards zero trust architectural framework, and most of them you will see along these lines of identifying the protect surface, uh, mapping out the traffic flows, and then coming up with an architecture, and then building a policy around it, right? And then finally, you always want to calibrate and redo your policies if they don't work correctly, right? It's not a one-time done, set and done kind of a thing. It's a continuous process. So yeah, that's what I would profess.
Sounds good. Thank you, Krishna, for sharing the your thinking, and definitely helps. And I was taking a lot of actually notes while you were talking, so I definitely want to bring you back. I had a lot more questions to ask. We could continue for another hour or so. So definitely would be great to have you. And I just want to thank you for coming on today with us, and sharing your ideas and thoughts. And because zero trust is very important topic for and everyone's mind. So everyone who is trying to get on that journey, they need to understand. And I want to thank for the audience for giving us time, listening and watching and learning. And that's all it's all about. So together, we're stronger together. So thank you everyone for joining in and watching us.
Yep. Thank you again. Thank you to everyone for patiently listening to this discussion. And Nikolay, thank you for having me. I enjoyed the discussion, and definitely look forward to coming back and having discussions on other topics that you have.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about these topics or IS Squared, please go to www.issquaredinc.com.